What conversations do middle managers avoid, and why does that matter?
In every organization, there's one group holding the whole operation together. Not the top, not the bottom, the middle. Today, three of the sharpest minds in middle management step up to the mic. Lisa Robyn Wood, Sally Foley-Lewis, and Jeff Sigel. Each brings a different lens, one shared mission. Decode what it really takes to lead from the middle with confidence, clarity, and impact. Same questions, three perspectives. Get ready for insight that cuts through the noise and goes straight to the operational heartbeat of your organization. Let's dive in.
Okay, so what conversations do I think middle managers avoid? I would say the first one are honest conversations around expectations and what's possible with stakeholders. I think when you're in the middle, you are literally trying to satisfy everyone around you, those that you lead, your peer group and your seniors. And I think what tends to happen often is trying to manage that perception of I can do this, I'm capable, I can deliver, results in saying yes to everything. And that is not always realistic. Actually, I don't even know why I say it's not always realistic. It's never realistic. So I think where middle managers then become challenged is the fact that they're saying yes to things that are not possible, when deep down they probably knew that was the case. So I think, it's being clear as to what's priority. It's flagging when priorities are conflicting, because that does happen. I think it's being clear about what's possible for yourself, for your team, and asking for what you need. I think that's also the conversation that often doesn't happen, is actually being much more direct around wants and needs and leaning into those conversations. I think we make assumptions around the status quo in our organisations, and we tell ourselves, well, that's just going to be rejected, or it's going to be too much of a hard conversation to get what I want, or I'm going to potentially have to negotiate and I want to avoid that because I don't feel confident in my negotiation capability. But a lot of this is assumptions. So I think actually it's managing expectations with stakeholders, and it's being clear and direct about what's required to actually achieve at times what is being asked for, or even just what good looks like. So I think they're two really key things and two key conversations to be having. I think the other is more directed at those that you lead and the team, but these are not necessarily new. I think these are conversations, to be quite frank, that managers at all levels avoid, and those are the performance conversations. The conversations around what's not working, what needs to be different, leaning into those conversations that possibly make us uncomfortable, but actually it's not about us, it's about those that we lead. And those are the conversations we have to have. That's a core responsibility of our job. It's being clear. It's being honest. That is being kind. That's really supporting people to realise their reality and to do something different, to be even better. So those are conversations we really must always lean into. And then I think it's the well-being and capacity conversations, recognising when someone is overloaded or close to really even potentially burnout, and worrying about opening something that necessarily they can't fix. But fundamentally, those are the conversations that have to be had to gather the information, to explore what's possible, and therefore then help people so that we avoid that disengagement, we avoid that burnout.
I totally agree with Lisa that middle managers tend to avoid expectation setting conversations, performance conversations. And I love that she picked up on the well-being conversations. Absolutely good point there. And I want to add another layer to this. I don't think the biggest conversations they avoid are always the external ones. I think the ones they avoid first are internal ones, the conversations with themselves. The moment where they may pause and say, do I actually believe this is achievable? Am I clear on what success really looks like? Am I leading from confidence or from a fear of disappointing someone? Because when you avoid that internal clarity, everything else can get a bit messy. It's that ripple effect. You could easily trip into saying yes too quickly. You may even soften feedback, and it's not about being aggressive, but we may circle the point and then therefore they never get it. Or we tolerate underperformance, or even ignore early signs of burnout in others and in ourselves. And it's not because of a lack of skill. Let me repeat that. I do not believe it's because of a lack of skill. It's because maybe we haven't resolved this situation for our own position first and foremost. Middle managers sit in that pressure point in the organisation. According to research from Gallup, managers account for up to 70% in the variation of team engagement. Now, that's a heavy, heavy influence load. It's also an opportunity. So if we are unclear internally, that uncertainty ripples outward. It can ooze outward, a bit like cheese melting off the edges of a burger. Sorry. So why does it matter? Okay, because avoided conversations, as you know, they compound. You keep sweeping dust under the carpet, that lump gets bigger and bigger that we trip over. Unclear expectations become missed targets, and missed targets become blame, and we all know blame erodes trust. So trust is the operating system of performance, and perhaps the real work for middle managers is this. Have the hard conversation with yourself first. Get clear, get grounded, and then lean into the conversations that follow. Clarity is not confrontation, it's actually leadership. And that means that you won't be saying yes too quickly. You will have the clear, direct conversations about feedback. You won't tolerate underperformance, and you will definitely pick up on any early signs of burnout because the middle matters.
Here's what I want to add to both Sally and Lisa's great answers. And that is that I think the conversation that middle leaders are not having, that they need to be having, is really boils down to this one simple question. And that simple question is the question, what am I missing? What am I missing is an awesome question to, ask yourself if you want to take Sally's sort of internal approach and say, having that conversation, internally with yourself of, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to learn, etc., is to ask yourself the question, what am I missing? What is it? Why is my team not doing what I want them to do? Why is my boss behaving in ways that don't make any sense? Why are my peers perhaps, not committed to helping me and the things that I need them to help me in? Asking yourself the question, what am I missing, forces you to look at things from a much broader perspective. Take your team's perspective and say, okay, what is it that they're seeing from their vantage point that I'm not seeing? What is it that my boss is seeing from their vantage point that I don't get? What are my colleagues? What are their priorities? How do they differ from mine? Again, what am I missing here is a great way of getting forcing yourself into a better perspective of all the things that are going on around you that you might not be aware of. Now, you might come to the conclusion at this point that you're missing something, but you don't know what it is. And this question of what am I missing is a great question to ask externally as well. Ask your team if they're pushing back on something. What am I missing here? Explain to them why you're asking them to do something. Explain what it is you're expecting from them. Clarify everything. And then if they're still pushing back, say, what am I missing here? What is it that I didn't understand? What is it that, is there something else on your plate? Is there some, obstacle that I'm not considering? What am I missing here? Same thing with your boss. Maybe you're trying to get promoted and you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall trying to get promoted and nothing's happening. Again, you're going to ask your boss this question, what am I missing here? And see if you can gain insight into the thing that you can't see from your vantage point. I suggest to people sometimes, if you're trying to get promoted, is what is it that you see in people who are at the next level that you're not seeing from me? Again, it's a variation of that idea of what am I missing here? And same thing if you're dealing with your peers. Your peers aren't supporting what it is you're trying to do. what are you missing? What is it about their world? What is their perspective? What's in their sort of, sites that you are not aware of that might be making it totally logical for them to push back on what you want to do, but you're just not aware of it. So again, for me, building on both what Sally and Lisa said, it's this question of what am I missing? That's the conversation that people aren't having that they need to have to really become successful as middle managers.
You've just heard from 3 leaders who have dedicated their careers to strengthening the heartbeat of every organization, the middle. From Cape Town, Lisa Robyn Wood is the middle manager coach. Her own leap into senior middle management sparked the confidence crisis that transformed her life and career. Today, she helps managers rebuild their confidence, sharpen their self-awareness, and thrive through GRIP Coaching's practical, high-impact development programs. Sally Foley-Lewis has spent over 20 years in the trenches and the boardroom, working with more than 20,000 managers across industries and continents. She's a global award-winning speaker, author, and educator who equips managers to be confident, capable, and courageous, and delivers the tools that lift performance fast. Jeff Sigel brings more than 2 decades across global food, grocery, and restaurant giants and a mission to build better workplaces from the inside out. He's a coach, author of The Middle Matters, helping leaders at every level increase their impact. 3 experts, 1 shared passion, helping middle managers succeed where it matters most. Stay connected, keep developing, and keep leading from the middle.